Marty McFly is an ordinary 17-year-old American teenager living in the troubled McFly family in Hill Valley, California in 1985. His father, George, constantly endures the bullying and taunts of his boss, Biff Tannen, and his mother, Lorraine, is an overweight alcoholic. On the morning of October 25, 1985, his scientist friend Dr. Emmett Brown, nicknamed Doc, calls Marty and asks him about meeting at the Twin Pines Mall at 1:15 a.m. to show him something amazing. At this time, the numerous clocks in Doc's room begin to chime in sync. Marty realizes he's late for school, says goodbye to Doc, and goes to school on his skateboard, clinging to passing cars. At school, he meets his girlfriend, Jennifer, who has also come late. They catch the eye of Principal Strickland, who writes them both tardy tickets, reminding Marty that his father has always been a loser and that he will suffer the same fate as well. After classes, Marty and his musical group have an audition, but the music committee does not accept his music. Jennifer advises him not to get upset and to continue practicing music. At this point, an old lady gives Marty a flyer that urges people to keep the clock on the courthouse, which has been out of commission for 30 years after being struck by lightning. Later that evening at dinner, the hero's mother talks about their relationship with their father in the past and how they met when he was hit by her father's car. Marty meets Doc as planned. Doc shows his young friend the DeLorean DMC-12, which he has modified to be a time machine. It's powered by plutonium, which generates 1.21 gigawatts of power for a device the inventor called the flux capacitor. Doc explains that you have to reach the speed of 88 miles per hour, 142 kilometers, to travel through time. Putting his dog Einstein in the machine, he sends the pet into the future for 1 minute. The dog returns safely, and Doc shares on camera his plans for traveling 25 years into the future to 2010. However, at that moment, Doc notices that the Libyan terrorists from whom he stole the plutonium when they ordered a nuke have found him, and their van is approaching. Marty saves himself by jumping into the DeLorean, but one of the terrorists shoots Doc right in front of him at point-blank range with an assault rifle. The terrorists chase after Marty, and one of them is about to blow up Dr. Brown's car with a grenade launcher. But at that moment, Marty reaches 88 miles per hour and disappears, being transported to November 5, 1955, as that date was entered by Doc in the counter, the day Emmett had a vision of the flux capacitor embodied in a time machine. After traveling through time, Marty finds himself at the Peabody Farm, which will later be the site of the Twin Pines Mall. The machine flies into the barn at full speed. The farmer's family mistakes Marty for an alien and the DeLorean for a spaceship because of the radiation protective suit McFly was in when he helped Doc fuel the car with plutonium. Fleeing by car from an enraged Peabody trying to shoot the alien with a shotgun, Marty accidentally knocks down one of two pine trees near the farmer's house. As a result, later in the future, the shopping center would be named Lone Pine Mall instead of Twin Pines Mall. Deciding that it's all just a nightmare, Marty drives home but discovers that the neighborhood he lives in, or rather will live in, hasn't even been built up yet. Marty hides the car behind a billboard for the new Lyon Estates neighborhood and heads to town on foot. In town, Marty's convinced he's in 1955 when he sees the date in the newspaper. Then the hero goes to a coffee shop where he meets his father George and Biff with his gang. They were his age at that time. Following George, Marty watches him climb a tree and peek through binoculars at Lorraine, who changes clothes at home. Having snapped out of the tree, the guy falls right into the road under her father's passing car. Marty jumps in to save him and takes a hit. Upon waking up, Marty sees Lorraine, young and slim. She falls in love with the hero at first sight and mistakenly calls him Calvin Klein because that's the name written on Marty's underwear. Marty shies away from her advances and goes to find Doc Brown after having lunch with the Baines family. Marty finds Doc at the address in the directory, convinces him that he's come from the future, and asks for help getting back to 1985. Doc explains that the plutonium needed to create 1.21 gigawatts of power is rare in the 50s. It can only be replaced by a lightning strike. Marty recalls the flyer from the future that said lightning would strike the clock on the courthouse next Saturday, November 12th at precisely 10:04 p.m. Emmett Brown undertakes the task of bringing the teenager back to the future and warns him that to avoid disrupting the space-time continuum, Marty must not communicate with anyone. However, Marty has already changed the course of history by preventing his parents from getting acquainted. According to Doc, he must bring them together at all costs or he will disappear. Marty remembers that he has a family photo from 1984 with his brother Dave and sister Linda on it. Horrified to find out that Dave has no head in the picture, he realizes that Doc is right. All week, Marty tries hard to make friends with George and Lorraine, but nothing works. The hero's mother only falls in love with Marty more and more, ignoring George. George's indecisiveness and fear of Biff Tannen, the main opponent, are the reasons for fault. Knowing George's weakness for science fiction, Marty shows up in a radiation suit at his door at night playing Van Halen music and introducing himself as the alien Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan, demanding that George invite Lorraine to the ball. George tries to invite Lorraine, but the brash Doc Biff gets in the way. Marty develops a plan where George must save Lorraine from being sexually harassed by Marty in the car when he and Lorraine arrive at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. However, at the crucial moment, a drunken Biff shows up, drags Marty out of the car, shoves him into the trunk of a neighboring car, and begins actively harassing Lorraine. Acting according to a plan, George opens the car door but finds Biff instead of Marty. Nevertheless, George is no longer willing to back down. In anger, Biff lashes out at him, but George gathers all his strength in his fist and strikes Biff in the jaw with his other hand, rendering him unconscious. Marty finds himself locked in the trunk of a car belonging to the very band his parents were listening to during their first kiss. In an attempt to free Marty, the band's guitarist Marvin Berry injures his arm. Marty agrees to substitute for him for a while. During the performance, he notices his brother and sister disappear from the family photo attached to the guitar fingerboard. He can already feel his own hand starting to disappear. At that moment, Lorraine and George kiss. Marty regains consciousness, and all of the family members come back into the picture. Marty is asked to play anything. He plays Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good. The Briefly Scooper is a project of classic movies recaps. We try to make our regular releases more frequent. To support the release of new videos with a donation, follow the link in the video description. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss new videos. Tell us in the comment section what other movie recaps you would like to see. After finishing his performance, Marty leaves to change before returning home, saying goodbye to Lorraine and George. Shortly before, he had written a letter to Doc to warn him of the impending Libyan attack. However, an outraged Doc tears up the letter without reading it, fearing it will change his future in a bad way. Before travel, some obstacles occurred. A fallen tree causes the opening of cables through which a lightning discharge is supposed to enter the machine's flux capacitor, and the DeLorean fails to start. But at the last moment, Doc manages to fix everything, and at 10:04 p.m., Marty successfully moves to 1985. Setting the timer 10 minutes early, Marty arrives in his year, but not in time to prevent Doc from being shot. When he mourns his longtime friend, he notices that he is awake. Doc shows Marty a bulletproof vest and a crumpled letter, saying that he read it after all and had time to prepare for the shooting. Doc gives Marty a ride home and heads off into the future. Marty wakes up in the morning and realizes that his house is completely different and his family has become prosperous. Dave has a prestigious job, Linda is popular, Lorraine looks great, George has become a confident science fiction writer, and Biff has become a car washer working for the McFly family. While Marty and Jennifer meet outside the garage where Marty is excitedly looking at his new car and preparing to test drive it, Doc from the future suddenly appears. He forces Jennifer and Marty to travel with him to 2015 to prevent some terrible events from happening in their children's lives. They get into the time machine, which takes off and disappears.